As a disclaimer, I was given a free copy of the rulebook for Yeld's 2nd edition, as well as the 1st edition when that came out, meaning there is a little bit of an incentive for me to cover this game. I reviewed the Magical Land of Yeld once when it was in its 1st edition, so I'm going to start my review by addressing those of you already familiar with Yeld. The 2nd edition is worth getting. There's a lot of new material that isn't in the core book, likely stuff from the Splat books I did not take the chance to read and review in 1st edition. Much of the text remains the same, and a lot of the concepts are more or less as I remember them, and the new additions are very welcome. It has an improved layout that is easier to read in the 2nd edition book, and there's much more clearly marked sidebars, section titles, keywords, and the charts have alternating colors, and there's also additional artwork. And there's also a few rebalancing and redefining of game terms and the like. I'd say if you only had the core book of Yeld 1st edition, the 2nd edition book is worth getting. If you've got all the previous books, maybe look for some other folks' reviews to see if there's any redundancies. The Yeld Stuff team contacted a lot of us to be their street team for this new release, so I'm pretty sure at least one of them would know. With that addressed, let's talk about some of the more specifics of what's in the book, shall we? The Magical Land of Yeld 2nd edition weighs in at roughly 400 pages, a hefty upgrade from the 1st edition. Yeld takes place in a fantasy world, named Yeld, where there's a magic door that only children can find and enter. And you play as such a gaggle of children that knows of the door to Yeld, when one day, you find that the door back home is locked. And the game is thus about your journey to find the keys needed to unlock that door and make it back home. But this journey is not without peril, since any child that turns 13 while in the magical land of Yeld turns into a monster. Time is a recurring theme in the mechanics of Yeld, as you'll soon find out. Though to simplify things, Yeld uses a calendar of 4 seasons, each lasting 30 days. So if you got a D30, this is one of those rare chances where you can randomize a specific day something happens. Before you get worried about anything like that though, let's go over character creation. Player characters in Yeld are referred to as friends, and the first step is to pick your friend's age and birthday, with the birthday being based on the Yeld calendar. Your character's age determines how many special dice you have, as well as how many restores you can attempt during the course of an adventure. So the trade-off is, if you're older, you have more that you can do, but younger characters can come back from the dead more often. Don't think too hard about it. And as you play through the game, it's possible your character will grow older, with special things happening on their birthday even. Next, you choose your character's friend type, basically what sort of role they fill in the group. This determines one of their core dice and some of their special dice as well. And you can even play as a doggy if you want. After that, you choose your core dice. Add one to strong, tough, smart, and brave, and then one extra somewhere else. You should have at least one core die in every stat, and a total of 6 when you're done. Then you choose your special dice. You choose one extra special die, as well as some extras based on your character's age. Keep in mind, though, there's a limit of 3 for any kind of special dice. Then you choose a home item, the list of which starts on page 183, and that is simply a mundane item that they brought with them from the home world. And lastly, you pick a name for them, and you're done. With your character complete, let's go over some of the basic concepts you're going to find throughout the rulebook. Core dice are the raw ability of your character, and there are 4 types. Strong, which is their physical might, and it's also used for beating up monsters. Tough is how much physical harm or exhaustion you can endure, and it's used for taking beatings from monsters. Smart is how much you know, and influences your ability to use magic. And brave is your ability to face your fears. It's used for restore rolls, taking actions while you're a ghost, or even coming back from being a ghost. Special dice represent the learned skills of your character, and there is a lot of different kinds of special dice. In fact, there's an entire section dedicated to them starting on page 140. Keep in mind, you can only ever have 3 of any given special dice. Borrowed dice are similar to special dice, but they're a little bit different. They come from your equipment that you're wearing, using, or from spells that have been cast on you. Borrowed dice have the same names as special dice, but they do not count towards the limit of 3 that a character can have for special dice. When your character sets out to do something, and it might not be certain if they'll succeed or not, that is called a challenge. You'll be asked to roll using one of your types of core dice, as well as a relevant special and borrowed dice. You roll all of them and compare them to a target number decided on by the GM. What happens next depends on what kind of challenge it was, and there are 3 types of these. Skill challenge, which is either pass or fail. If you meet or beat the target number, you succeed. If not, you do not succeed, and you need to find some other way to solve the problem at hand. Effort challenge is, no matter what, you will succeed, but if you don't roll high enough, you will suffer somehow as a result, usually represented by temporarily losing one of your core dice. And heroic, which is a combination of skill and effort challenges, where not only will you not make progress if you fail, but you will also lose a core die. In any case, players will always narrate what happens to their character during challenges, but they must obey the results of the dice. If the roll says you didn't succeed, then your character does not succeed, though you do get to decide for yourself how they did not succeed. For any other character involved in a challenge, the GM decides. And on one final note, player characters always win ties in this game, unless a roll is against another player character, in which case, just roll again and see who wins, and keep rolling if ties keep happening. One of the major parts of Yeld is fighting. They start whenever a player character says they want to start a fight with somebody, and the person who starts the fight goes first. Turn order, though, is where things get a little bit wacky. Whoever just completed their turn picks the next character to act, friend or foe, so long as that character has not acted yet. Making attacks is straightforward. You roll your strong core dice and may use any relevant borrowed dice from equipment such as weapons. Your target rolls tough, along with any relevant borrowed dice from their armor. Whoever rolls higher succeeds. And if the attacker succeeds, the defender loses one of their core tough dice. Anybody who has their core tough dice reduced to 0 dies. Even player characters. In fact, player characters become ghosts when they die. So you'll be down, definitely dead, but not necessarily out. Monsters, when they die, have their own special rules, including becoming ghosts themselves, or contributing to a global effect called Restless Dead. To that end, killing is not always the ideal solution, unless you want to be like little Johnny having to deal with ghosts in their living room. This is where some of the other special dice come into play, such as Do Things with Rope, Scare, and Negotiate, as well as certain spells. Fights are also where you're most likely to use most of your spells. Spellcasting is a skill challenge using the caster's smart core dice against the difficulty rating of the spell. If you meet or beat this number, you successfully cast the spell. The target is permitted to resist the spell, which is also a smart roll, with their target number being the result of the spellcaster. If the caster succeeds, and the target is unable to resist, the spell takes effect per its write-up. And worth noting is that, while magic is powerful, it can go haywire. If you ever roll 2 1s when you cast a spell, regardless of how many dice you have, you set off a magical disaster. The list of those is on page 242. And as an additional note, magical disasters are not automatic failures. It just means the spell didn't quite go off as planned. Some magical disasters can cause your spell to undo itself. Others, however, just cause some additional side effect in addition to the main effect. There is also some special dice that allow you to use special actions in a fight. In these cases, success causes whatever the effect of the special dice is, instead of losing one tough die. Such as Do Things with Rope allows you to tie up a weakened enemy, preventing the need to kill them. If something is about to happen that you don't want to have happen, You can use brave dice to interrupt another character's action, but only one interrupt can happen per action. Nobody wants to wind up with the ridiculousness of one person having interrupted your interrupt, which was interrupting his interrupt that interrupted. You get the picture. If you right and truly don't have anything useful to do at the moment, though, you can bank your action, saving it for later. And I save the most interesting part of this for last. The wildest part of fights in the magical land of Yeld. The action chain. The normal end of your turn is that you pick who goes next. If the action you took on your turn was successful, and you pick another player character, that creates an action chain. Action chains add more dice to any rolls made by characters participating in it, be it for the action on their turn, or for their response to an action made against them not on their turn. The number of dice added is equal to the number of successful actions in the chain minus 1. Meaning that an action chain that's gone on for 2 actions will give everybody else a +1. If it somehow goes on for 7 actions, everybody thereafter gets a +6. There are 3 things that can end an action chain, though. The first is if somebody is unsuccessful in another action. That breaks the chain. The second is if somebody takes an action that simply doesn't call for a roll, like dashing or banking your action. And third is if a monster interrupts the action chain with them using their own brave dice. Passing initiative over to a monster, however, does not break the action chain, which is one of the changes from first edition that they made in second, and it makes the action chain just a little bit stronger. And there's also a neat little comic illustrating how it works. Following the instructions in the book, it recommends everybody goes through friend creation, and also makes sure that they understand the contents of the fight section, since that's the most direct application of the rules of the game. And if you're the game master, it also says you should read the running and adventure section. Though, if you're like me and you're prone to looking to skip as much of the rulebook as you reasonably can, there is actually some really important stuff you can miss out about how to best run the magical land of Yeld if you overlook the story section. The story digest section gives the overall idea behind what a campaign of the magical land of Yeld should look like. If you're really impatient and must know now, it goes a little bit like this. The player characters find the door to Yeld. They find the door is locked when they try to leave. Somebody in Yeld then explains to them that the only way out is to slay the hunters of Yeld and recover the keys from them, which can then open the door. And that is when the real adventure begins. I'm probably overlooking some details, so do remember to read that part of the book for yourself. Knowing this next bit is essential though, since what time certain things should be available to the player characters is outlined on page 34 on the story outline chart, as well as what difficulty levels of the story should be. However, tabletop role-playing games being what they are, you could abandon those guidelines as you see fit, but keep in mind that this structure does serve a purpose, and you might want to work within it a little bit before you go discarding it. As far as how many sessions you should go through before you reach a specific point in the storyline, the rulebook does say that is up to you. Once you've read through that section, though, the next section is about the history of the land of Yeld, and in general is just lots and lots of lore. Probably stuff from Modest Medusa, the webcomic this game was originally based on. Loosely. Kind of. There was an arc in the comic where they went to the titular Medusa's homeworld, which was the magical land of Yeld. But anyways, that's the stuff I don't usually talk about, and other folks reviewing this game will likely spend more time on that. Maybe. If you are one of the other people who are reviewing this and you do spend more time on the lore, feel free to leave a comment with your YouTube channel in there. I digress though. Continue along with the book's advice. The next thing you'll want to read if you want to become familiar with how to run the game of Yeld is the aptly named Running an Adventure section, which starts on page 251. And it outlines the scenario creation process well enough, complete with its advice on how to navigate the game's own idiosyncrasies. That section, combined with the story outline chart on page 34, will give you both the crunchy and fluffy details you're going to need. With all that said, I'm going to end this with some of the neat subsystem that Yeld offers. The things that really make the core dice mechanics, as well as the themes of exploring and passing time, really shine through in the magical land of Yeld. On page 66 is The Wonders of Yeld. And this is a table of all manner of things that the players can encounter while traveling. It makes the tedium of, you travel for 3 days and reach your destination, more interesting. Moreover, I love random charts. It is a 10d6 chart, meaning, yes, you roll 10 6-sided dice and add them all up. Then you consult the number you came up with to see what the players will find. The multiple dice really skews things towards the center though, so you can always just pick something arbitrarily if you're reading through and it sounds cool. Again, the rules of tabletop role-playing games being enforced by but the whims of one person. If that one person insists on a specific outcome, not a whole lot can stop them. Then, on page 71, we have The Holidays of Yeld. Equal parts lore and positive reason to keep track of the passage of time. And, by the way, did I mention that I love random tables? Because I do. At the end of an adventure, all the party gets reward dice. These are not so much dice, but more a resource that gives you all kinds of benefits, such as gaining new special dice if you want them. Or rolling on the treasure table. You can always save them for later too, just in case you already are content with what you have and don't feel that you need to get anything new yet. Page 241 is where you'll find the treasure table, along with many other important tables, such as the Magical Disaster Table. I recommended this game when I got my hands on the first edition. While it wasn't exactly my kind of game, I still believed that there was a lot of merit to it. It follows a lot of video game logic, and if somebody feels so inclined, they right and truly can think of it as a video game, just without the video. There's an end goal with a built-in roadmap on how to reach said end goal, so the game is less likely to drag on for years at a time with no end in sight. After all, if you enjoyed it once, why not finish it and then play it again from beginning to end? There's also a lot of new content that the second edition adds, so if you felt like the first edition was lackluster and didn't want to shell out money for the extra books, think of Yeld's second edition as like a Game of the Year edition. It's the same basic game, but with a bunch of extra stuff added. It's an overall improvement, and honestly the sort of thing I like to see when a game enters its second edition. Rough edges get smoothed out from the first, and new things are added to make the core more robust. Thanks for watching. If you found this video interesting or helpful, consider giving me a thumbs up like. And if you want to learn more about other indie tabletop role-playing games, check out some of my other videos, or consider subscribing. With all that said, I am Aron der Schädel, and I will see you all next time.